This is the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month. My name is Andre. I'm with USA EBN. I'm joined by Nancy Leader from Zeta Talk. Nancy, are you there?
I am, and I'm so excited to talk about EMP increase. It's on the increase, no question. I've had electronics here at home fried, and now I've had to wrap my outdoor surveillance cams in copper foil because they keep getting blinking out. So before we get into all that, let me read our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. There's been an increase in EMP affecting mankind's electronics. What is EMP, and how does it differ from lightning caused by friction between cloud and atmosphere layers? High pressure pushes over or under a low pressure region, and kaboom! Thunder and lightning. EMP is electromagnetic pulse. As is known, magnetons and electrons like to flow together, which is why we can induce an electronic flow around a twirling magnet. Wikipedia describes the electronic crippled by EMP as the victim, an apt term, and I quote, EMP events usually induce a corresponding signal in the victim equipment. We have an increase in victims lately because, in the opinion of the Zetas, Nibiru is pointing its magnetic north pole toward the Earth, but more on that another day. Ball lightning. Mankind is familiar with the flow of electrons and induced magnetic fields, but per the Zetas, there are more particles involved than just these two. Take, for instance, ball lightning. Ball lightning is a phenomenon that mankind cannot explain, but the knowledgeable Zetas are not at a loss. In the opinion of the Zetas, mankind thinks of electrons as a single particle flow. Not so, say the Zetas, and I quote, consider that within this charged field there are not simply electrons and particles that create the phenomenon of magnetism, but all the other 387 particles that operate in a similar manner, each with its own desire to equalize its distribution in the vicinity. Ball formation occurs when the particles that would disperse are forced to remain in the vicinity by a greater pressure from other particles surrounding them. End of the quote from Zeta Talk. The MinMin lights. Ball lightning is known as MinMin lights in Australia. The ball can travel and is known to chase cars or enter homes. Quoting Wikipedia, MinMin lights is the name given to an unusual light phenomenon that has been reported numerous times in eastern Australia. Stories about the lights can be found in Aboriginal myths predating Western settlement of the region. End of the quote. The Zetas point to plate stress, the electronic screech that rocks under pressure produces. As the Indo-Australia plate is pushed under the Himalayas, the eastern one-third of Australia tilts up, thus the area where MinMin lights are seen. Now let me just state that electronic screech is squeezing the air out of rock so that electronic, magnetism and electronic flow can come through the rock. Air insulates against electronic flow. Thus, if you squeeze the rock, we get the screech from electron flow happening. Mankind's primal experience with EMP is lightning. Lightning occurs worldwide, but lightning strikes seem notably higher in the Congo, which is wet and on the equator, and in Argentina, which is pulling apart at Buenos Aires due to the South America roll, and along the New Madrid fault line in the U.S., which is being pulled in a diagonal manner, and in places where subduction is intense, as in the Himalayas. The threat of a lightning strike can be reduced if one avoids being attractive. Lightning wants to ground, since water is a conductor will aim for water or wet ground. Metal is a conductor, so standing next to a metal flagpole during a lightning storm is unwise. Don't be fishing in a boat out on the water. Lightning will aim for the tallest object, so don't stand under a tall tree. Avoid taking a shower in a lightning storm, as your proximity to water and plumbing pipes is a risk. Because cars have rubber tires, which are not conductive, sitting in a car and avoiding touching metal is considered a safe zone. Buildings routinely install lightning rods at their high points, which ground via a wire into the ground. This avoids having lightning course through the house, deflecting it. Surge protectors are advised for any appliance connected to the phone lines or electric lines, as the lightning can, of course, surge along these and destroy equipment via the associated pulse. I had a personal experience of lightning exploding a big oak tree just outside my window. My arm was numb for a week, and the TV colors had to be adjusted. Likewise, have had a PC blown when lightning came in via the phone lines. Now I use only the best surge protectors. Is EMP on the increase? Oh, what's different since Nibiru came into the inner solar system in 2003? Big airplanes have been going down with total electronic failure, though they guard against lightning. I am told that lightning can strike an airplane and it just sort of rattles off, and they've built them that way it is. So lightning strike will not take a plane down. Air France 447 in 2009 went down over the highly magnetized mid-Atlantic rift, losing all electronics. This was documented by the ACARS system, which reports back automatically. One by one, the electronic systems on the plane went silent, but the crash was blamed on pilot error. He just didn't know how to fly in weather. Per Reuters, 4 hours into the flight, the plane encountered heavy turbulence. 15 minutes later, now a long way out to sea, it transmitted an automated signal indicating the plane was in serious trouble. A succession of a dozen technical messages showed that several electronic systems had broken down, most ominously the pressurized system, a totally unprecedented situation in the plane. MH370, the next most notable incident of a major airplane being affected by electromagnetic pulse, was the MH370 disappearance in 2014. The floating blame for this moved from pilot suicide to the plane being kidnapped for nefarious reasons. As usual, the airline manufacturer, and the Malaysia royal family were not to be blamed. But why did MH370 disappear from radar and then reappear on radar flying out into the Indian Ocean? Is the suicidal pilot able to do that? Radar, of course, is also affected by EMP. Quoting Al Jazeera. According to FlightAware, a flight tracking website, the jet leveled off at 35,000 feet 19 minutes into its flight and then appears to have stopped transmitting any data. End of the quote. Jumping ahead to 2016, we had MS-804, going into a spiral over the Mediterranean as it approached Egypt to land. This was again over water and above a plate border between the Great African Plate and the Eurasian Plate. The Great African Plate does the African roll, and the Great Eurasian Plate is perpetually under a stretch from Scandinavia to Tibet, a lot of electronic screech. The ACARS system on MS-804 indicated the electronics were failing. As always, this crash went under investigation, but the truth is the first victim. JT-610. Now in 2018, we have the JT-610 once again over Indonesia waters. The pilot indicated undisclosed trouble and wanted to turn back, but suddenly there was radio silence at 3,000 feet. The plane went nose down and hit the water at an estimated 600 miles per hour. For the Zetas, the evidence of EMP is obvious, and I quote, "Air traffic control lost contact with the pilot when the plane was still at 3,000 feet. Lost contact. This was not the pilot distracted and not speaking. It was lost contact. Radio silence." Formerly, these disasters occurred when large plates went over water, when passing over plate boundaries or rock under compression or stretch, creating what the Zetas call that electronic screech. Now this has escalated to smoking planes over land, occurring over Siberia and over Australia and over India within this past month. This escalation includes U.S. military planes, the stealth bomber over the continental U.S., and Hornets lost over the Philippine Sea. Quoting Q13 Fox, rave stealth problems. The aircraft was diverted after experiencing a number 4 engine failure, followed a complete electronic failure. Shortly after the pilots were able to restore the electrical system, they began experiencing pressurization issues. Well, needless to say, they landed the cell as quick as they could, not wanting to lose it. The Department of Homeland Security has noticed, quoting from a publication called Protecting and Preparing the Homeland Against Threats of Electromagnetic Pulse and Geomagnetic Disturbances. This is dated October 9th, 2018. Very pertinent, very recent. And I quote, "Extreme electromagnetic incidents caused by an intentional electromagnetic pulse, EMP, or a naturally occurring geomagnetic disturbance, GMD, also referred to as space weather, read in that Nibiru, as I would have to say, could damage significant portions of the nation's critical infrastructure, including the electric grid, communications equipment, water and wastewater systems, and transportation modes." End of the quote. So they're calling Nibiru space weather. But that's supposed to include the sun, which is absolutely asleep, snoring away up there, no sunspots, nothing going on. And it has been for some time, Okay, since the sun is asleep at present, the reference to space weather is, of course, Nibiru. Like Voldemort's name, we do not utter its name, apparently. We don't say Nibiru. We have had electric trains surging off their tracks, such as happened at Hoboken in 2016. Big step-up transformers at dams exploding, such as the Sanyo Shusheskanya in 2009 in Russia and Itaipu in Brazil in 2017. So this is nothing new, these surges. We have had cell phones electrocuting their owners and escalators spilling people onto the floor, and electric cars running away with their passengers, and now, in 2018, an elevator dropping from the 95th floor to the 11th floor in the Hancock Building in Chicago. One of the cables snapped was the reason. What kind of an argument was the elevator having with itself for that to have happened? It seems to me that for a cable to snap, one part of the elevator wanted to go down, the other part wanted to stay up, and they were working at odds with each other. Why would it snap? What evidence do we have that all these problems are caused by EMP or that EMP is on the increase? We can point to the Schumann Resonance increase. The Schumann Resonance is the Earth's natural heartbeat, operating at 7.83 hertz rate. It has been massively spiking of late, up to a white-hot 120 hertz. And these spikes correlate to times when mankind's electronics are walloped. People report an increase in insomnia, irritability, headaches, deep fatigue, and nausea. We can point to the spaghetti mess that the Earth's magnetic field, as modeled by BATSRUS, has become over the past decade. Can we live a lot without electricity? Yes, we can. The Amish do. But our electronics is not so lucky. EMP does not kill people, though it makes us dizzy, nauseous, given to headaches and sleepy spells, and irritability. But our electronic devices, whammo, fried. What can we do? There are, of course, Faraday cages. A Faraday cage or Faraday shield will block EMP, but it also blocks Wi-Fi and presumably cell phone use. It is the technique to shield sensitive electronic equipment. These shields can be large or small, ridged or as flexible as a cloth, quoting Wikipedia. A Faraday cage operates because an external electrical field causes the electric charge within the cage's conducting material to be distributed such that they can cancel the field's effect on the cage's interior. And they show a picture, Wikipedia does, which I will have on my Zeta report, YouTube, to follow. This show, and there's a human being standing in a cage with somebody, directing a lightning surge of electricity, right at the cage. Oh, certain death, but the person inside is, filing her nails and could care less, just to show it works. The Zetas are not here with good news. EMP will increase as the passage of Nibiru approaches, and not ease until it zips out of the solar system, which the Zeta state will happen quickly after it passes Earth. In the meantime, they have a few words of advice, quoting the Zetas. Electronics can be encased in a Faraday shield, perhaps the most obvious and easily arranged solution. But mankind's electronic systems cannot be redone overnight, nor will a Faraday solution allow for communications by cell phone or Wi-Fi, which are also blocked by a Faraday shield. Coordinating flights to times when the Schumann Resonance and related EMP are temporarily low is another solution. End of the quote. Well, can you just see that? The airline saying, oh, well, we're tentatively scheduling you for Thursday, but we'll give you a quick call because it might be Friday or Saturday or who knows, but we'll call you when they would have to admit EMP. What are they going to say? Space weather won't allow us to go up. Our insurance rates are too high if we try to fly when the BATSRUS is, red hot, or, the Schumann Resonance is white hot. And people are going to start to say, well, what? Space weather? What? How did this get so bad so quick? It begs the question, what about Nibiru? And when is plane flying going to get dangerous enough that people just don't clamor aboard to go to Disney World or something? Even business flights, can't you use Skype? Can't you get on the phone? Can't you transmit diagrams? They have all these interactive online chats that can be used. Same thing with relatives. I say to people, I'm not getting on a plane. You want to see me? Let's get on Skype. I have a video, right? I have a video cam. So we're not there yet. Not enough people have died. The insurance rates haven't gone up. If the insurance rates go up, then the price of tickets is going to go up. Then fewer planes will fly. But in the meantime, people go down. So that is the end of my prepared lecture, Andre. And we have a couple other things lined up to talk about. Did you have any comment about EMP?
Well, I was going to touch on the Faraday cage solution. not to be a Debbie Downer on protecting your electronic devices, but I think the Zeta's hinted at it in the in a quote from Zeta Talk that you stated that you can protect your electronics with that. Some people use an old microwave that's grounded out and put their stuff inside, their electronics inside the microwave, because the microwave is designed to hold X-ray radiation inside of it. So, my thing is, at the end of the day, when you come on the other side of, let's say, a major electronic or a major EMP event, if it's more than localized as it has been, it's more global, where many facilities are knocked out. And like you said, you can't use Wi-Fi when you're using a Faraday cage, so you're kind of cut off. So if you do have your electronics survive and you got your laptop and everything after the big EMP event, and then, well, there's nobody to talk to. Or there's no way to talk to them because there's no internet, or there's no access. There may be an internet for the few that have access, but if your server's knocked out at your local, say, Charter or whoever your provider is, you're not gonna. Ham radio might be the best way to go. If it's going to be electronics that you want to save, it'd be cell phone, ham radio, electronic devices that have stored information, such as how to create, books and that sort of thing. I think would be the things that you would save. Smaller items that you could use for reference materials or emergencies. Saving the gaming system for the Xbox is probably not the first priority.
Here's my personal experience. I recently, as I said, I have two outdoor cams. The two indoor cams were fine. Huh?
You had a bunch of stuff burn up outside, right? With zapped.
Yeah, and I'll step through it. I have two outdoor cams, two indoor cams, in case people crawling through a basement window or whatever. The indoor cams have never been knocked out by EMP, because they have the house to go through, presumably, more. But I had the two outdoor cams very vulnerable. One of them is just terribly vulnerable. And bing, the first time the Schumann Resonance, picks up speed, it's out. And then I have to recycle, right? And the same thing. So I got copper foil, and they use Wi-Fi to talk to the router in the house. So I couldn't just wrap them up, like a burrito. I had, because then the Wi-Fi couldn't get out. So I know where Nibiru is. It rises with the sun, and it's always a little bit to the south in an arc. And so I positioned the copper foil to block what would be coming from Nibiru, and I got a lot of success on the one that is hiding under the garage eaves, and it took the Schumann Resonance went white hot for like days and days before it finally succumbed. But in other words, I reduced the incidence of getting knocked out and having to be recycled. The other one, I'm going to put more copper. I'm going with the approach that I'm trying to block the rays coming from Nibiru, the blast, and then now they're still talking, to the router. Now the other thing I had happen was about a year or more ago, a couple of years I think, and we had a big EMP in the area. I had a friend of mine in Baraboo, 5 miles away, who said the TV in his guest bedroom just turned itself on, and like that, right? Anyway, all the lights in the basement went out at the same time. 5 bulbs, bloop, burned out, which is peculiar. You can understand 1 or 2 going. But, and the hot water heater fried the filament. Now, these are filaments. The light bulbs have filaments, and the water heater has a filament. Other stuff like the washer and dryer and the furnace and all the rest of it was fine. Nothing fried, in other words, right? It might have pulsed, but if I wasn't using it at the time, the wash machine didn't jump or anything like that. It wasn't on. So I had to get a new water heater for $1,100. I was furious. So my brother comes up, and he has a cottage across the street. And he goes over, and he's throwing his electric on, because he turns it off when he's gone. And all of a sudden, his circuit board that controls his water heater was blown out, just like that. Now, this was all sort of the same week, right? Now, what is a common denominator here is the area, but also our water table is right under the house, right under my floor. I mean, if you dug down a couple of feet from the basement floor, you'd probably hit water, right? So I know that because of the well, and people have gauged where the well water, the old well, went 15 feet down and then boop, water, right? Okay, so I'm right on an aquifer.
15?
Yeah, 15 feet down from the ground.
Well, right,
where
but
I have
typically
water.
your well is going to go. Yeah, but your well is going to go 10 feet farther to make sure that it always has water. So that's close. That's like 3-4 feet below. You're right.
I'm sitting on water. I'm sitting on water, and my brother too is just right there. You know. So anyway, we know of a woman in France, and there's a big aquifer in eastern France, and her farm is right on that. Boy, does she have problems. Her internet doesn't work, nothing works. You know, and it comes and goes. You know, it was a thing about EMP coming from Nibiru. As the day passes, to me it's the worst. You know, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the morning, because that's when it's rising up and it's preceding the sun, and it must be the angle of Nibiru or whatever, which is pointing at us. That's when I get blasted, you know, and I've learned that, you know. So she has certain times it's worse than others too, and as a woman in the UK, you know, oh my God, you know, you don't hope to hear from her on the internet until a certain time of day, and then now she's back, you know. So it definitely is related to those things, yeah.
So just quick to clarify that with your webcam, outdoor webcam situation, so those are Wi-Fi based, so then you need to have, so you're doing like a partial Faraday system or Faraday cage or blocking, basically. It's a tinfoil hat. It's just made out of copper.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tinfoil hat for the camera.
That's what I'm doing. I'm you know, it's like a big C around it, you know, but blocking between a curve, you know, blocking between, and it does cut down the incidence. It's helpful, you know, but I don't know what else to do. You know, I'm just going to have to resign myself to losing them, I guess, you know, as it gets worse.
Well, if you've got it figured out now, so it's like a rising sun, so it's the sun-facing side of, let's say, the camera is where the blast is coming from. It's localized that way, so it's not like the whole grid is going to come down if we get nailed by an EMP. It's directed from the tail, according to the Zetas, and evidenced by your, you know, that's an experiment that kind of proves it right there. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it was very helpful. I was able to, instead of having to run out every day and recycle, I went like a week and a half before I had to, you know. So I mean, that's very helpful, you know.
Well, just a quick question on the EMP blast on your camera system. Were you able to record sort of a fuzziness, or how did it come in on the video? Did it just cut out to black?
It just black. It just goes black. Yeah. And I don't know how the cam itself works, but I do know that I can. It's like rebooting your computer. I can recycle it, and then it's back. You know, so it doesn't destroy the camera, but it just prevents it from. It's offline or somehow. However, that, you know, I'd have to go into the internals on the cam, you know, which I'm not familiar with, to be able to say what exactly is connected. But
well, depending on your situation too. With EMPs, it could be, you know, more widespread, or depending on, like, if you have a building where you have more steel reinforcement or steel reinforced concrete, that could help with the dissipation of the blast too. So there's other things that could affect it. So it's not going to hit everybody the same way.
Yeah, my indoor cams survive. They have never had this problem because they're behind walls, and this is a big old house, you know, solid. My grandfather built it. So definitely being inside a structure, even if it's just wood, you know, makes a difference. It dissipates a lot of that stuff. Yes. So what was I was going to say something about this.
We're going to talk about there's
planes, airplanes, the stealth plane. You know, I think electronic failure happens, but it can come back. And that quote about the stealth plane, and this went down, but then they got it back, and then this hit, and then this happened. And, so presumably some of these planes, like Air France 447 or MH370 that had, JT610, that had this total electronic failure, right? If it weren't for the fact that they were up there and were falling, presumably they could come back. It would return, and it would work as soon as they were out of the EMP surges, right? They could flip a switch or whatever, presumably. But what usually happens in airplanes, in addition to the falling, which is fatal, is that the pressure system goes away, and they can't get air. They can't get oxygen pulled in from outside. Everybody passes out, including the pilots. And they're just, that's it. They die. And if they dig these, if they're honest about it, they never are. The news is never honest, saying, well, they all had stopped breathing from lack of oxygen. They never say that. They say the pilot was suicidal, or some garbage like that. They demonize the pilots, and it's just horrible. All for profit.
Well, they did the same thing for the conductor for the Hoboken thing too. Threw him right under the bus. No pun intended. Not to combine different.
And all it
but
was.
It's like.
Yeah, I mean, what did he do? Step on the gas as he's approaching the wall? No, he was approaching water in an electric train that stops there right at the water's edge. Well, hello, those are the two components of EMP. The electronic lure, here I am, I'm an electronic, and lightning likes to ground in water, and lightning, the electronics likes to arc and run together. And it said, oh, my two lovers are right there together luring me in. Whammo. And Hoboken train picked up speed, and blam. Yeah, they threw him under the bus. Right. Very sad. Well, but there's no arguing with it when a cover-up is in process like this, you're told, shut up if you know what's good for you, I guess. And here's your payoff, probably.
Or you have a nasty heart attack accident, but we could go on and on. But Alaska got shaken up pretty bad a couple of days ago. I think they've finally decided it was a 7.2 magnitude earthquake near Alaska, Wasilla, tearing up roadways and such. Do you have any more information on that?
Well, nothing more on that, except that is, of course, an area where the Pacific is compressing, etc., and that's an area that bends. It's under a bow tension. You can see, take the tip of Mexico and pull it up toward the Aleutian Islands, and you can see, that there are places that are going to be compressed, very, very badly. And that's why we have all this breaking water and gas mains in the U.S. But what struck me was the way the roadways got torn. And I'm doing something next week in my newsletter about that, because the Zetas have said since 1995, don't assume you can go to your safe locations after, when the time comes. Oh, it's the last week, so let's go to Uncle Bob's. Oh dear, the roads and the bridges are down, and we can't, that's going to happen. And this is a reminder of that, and you can get off the road vehicles and hope, but or bike your way up, pedaling all the way, but the roads are likely to be ripped to pieces, heaved, bridges down. So this was a stark reminder of that. So look for that next week in my newsletter. I did prepare something in case we had a couple of minutes about a fact that Atlantis has been found. Folks, there's all this argument about, it's in the Caribbean, it's in Antarctica, it's, people are always finding Atlantis. But the Zetas have said since the start that it was just off coast of Europe without being real specific. And Plato was more specific. So let me just chat away here in our last remaining moments. Speculation about the location of Atlantis ranges from somewhere in the Mediterranean, which has had sinking land over the ages, somewhere in the Atlantic, and perhaps the Caribbean, which likewise has had sinking land bridges between Florida and Venezuela over the ages. As the Zetas explained, the Atlantic is pulled apart and the Pacific compresses. The African roll has likewise occurred during past pole shifts per the Zetas, but no solid discoveries have occurred until just recently. Quoting Ancient Origins, popular theories place Atlantis in locations like the coast of Cyprus in the eastern Mediterranean, around the Azores Island in the middle of the Atlantic, somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle off the coast of the United States, or even in more exotic locations such as Antarctica and Indonesia. At the Honandan National Park of Spain, which is at the shore of southern Spain near Seville, a large harbor wall and circular bases were discovered. These match descriptions of Atlantis by Plato. Plato also stated that Atlantis was just beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar. The Zetas have confirmed all this. The Zetas also confirmed that a large undersea pyramid at the Azores and a triangular footprint near Spain, both on the African plate border, were placed there by the Annunaki to try to hold back the African roll. Notable are what appears to be large punch points right where this recent discovery would have placed the island of Atlantis. The land has been pushed down there. This confirms what the Zetas and the true channeled work, the Oashpi, have stated, that benign aliens were allowed to destroy Atlantis, as it was home of the Anunnaki, who were enslaving mankind. Just one of the ways they were pushed from the earth, apparently. And that's the end of my comments about Atlantis. But it's dramatic to see these photos and how it all comes together. Plato is really the guy who called it. You know, he apparently had a lot of descriptions about Atlantis and how evil they were and how they were always, you know, the Greeks were always like, you know, preparing to rebut their ships and this kind of thing. And it was the Anunnaki, according to the Zetas, in the opinion of the Zetas, were chased off Earth until like 4,000 years ago. They were here harvesting gold, trying to enslave mankind, running around, and they need the gold for their atmosphere of Nibiru, on Nibiru, because it reflects heat and light and keeps them snug and well lit in their long sojourn through space, as they have this long, long orbit away and back again. So they were chased away and quarantined by, per the Zetas, the Council of Worlds, which is our administrative force here, kind of like the Supreme Court and a police force and you don't argue with the council. They have a reach. They know all. You know, they can, you know, send you flying just like that. So that they wanted the Anunnaki off Earth because they were intimidating man, and man did not have a balanced spiritual schoolhouse, quote unquote. Okay, so they had to go. Well, how do you do that? Well, they said they gave them so many accidents. They were losing their gold. Their ships at sea were sinking. They had all these terrible storms that were happening. Oh, you know, and things like that. And they just decided that the Earth was not a good place anymore. They never did get along with our big predators like lions, and their home planet Nibiru doesn't have predators like that at all. So here we have, well, what don't we have? You know, the sharks and lions.
Right.
So they had all these accidents. All this scary stuff was going on. So they went off to Mars and went back to Mars, you know, to try to mine that on a moon of Mars known as Phobos. And how do we know that they were there? Because the Russians tried to send a probe there, and as they got close and they were sniffing around, something came out and zapped the probe, and it was caught by the probe's video. So we could see that there was something in Phobos that didn't want to be probed. You know, well, there we go. So they're not at Earth. They're not coming back because they consider that mankind is now not only rebellious and, you know, etc., but we've multiplied and we've got technology, and it's just more headaches. So wherever they go to mine for gold in our solar system, they're not going to mess with us, and we aren't going to mess with them. And the Zetas have made sure, they said that the benign aliens are guarding this so that we will not get to Mars. We will not colonize Mars. Forget what Elon Musk says. He's just collecting money for his enterprises. It ain't going to happen because we're supposed to be quarantined from each other. So what do you think of all that, Andre?
Well, I think with the combination of the Schumann Resonance zaps and more of the general public's awakening process as it goes through and gets accelerated over this next week, you can talk about sociological changes. You can check out, Zeta Talk for sociological changes. What I'm talking about is the revolutions and albeit mostly peaceful revolutions that are going on via social media or France or, a lot of things are going on around the world at the same time. And I think that, as we go forward, that we'll find that we're more on the same page as a collective here. And the others, the service to self or evil type people, entities will just, make their exit somehow or go to jail would be preferable.
Yeah, they are.
Doesn't have to
there is
go to jail.
A gradual.
They don't have to go to jail.
Yeah, there's a gradual transformation, and you can see this, and the way people are interacting with each other. It's quite a quiet transformation. Mm-hmm. I watched some of the hurricanes, like Hurricane Harvey was one in which I was astonished at how people rose up, and what was that one off the coast where the Carolinas were being flooded? Here come the Cajun Navy up, and it's just so heartwarming, because they're not looking for personal benefit. They're just out to help each other. That type of thing is on the increase if you pay attention. And the elite, the dictatorial masters, etc., they're suffering. They're being squeezed back and down into their little cages, and well, I say cages because their bunkers will become cages, and it's happening. It is happening. So also, when you mentioned the disclosure, not only of Nibiru, which we're waiting for, it seems that people are becoming aware of it one way or the other on their own, if only because they're chatting with aliens on spaceships, but also the alien presence, admitting that intelligent life elsewhere is real, and that the Earth is and has been visited, etc. So these two things, these are two different sister disclosures or brother disclosures that are hand in hand marching forward, and we'll wait and see where this goes. But it ain't going down. It ain't going to hell. It's going upward, onward, and upward, and for the betterment of mankind. Yes.
And we will be with you all the whole way until, the electronics go.
Yes, and just remember, folks, get those chickens and goats and learn how to save seed and get container gardening, and don't sit in the middle of the city on the coastline. Find a way to get inland so you are at your safe location. Donkeys, burros, llamas. We have hobby farms in the area. I love seeing it all. Free-ranging chickens. That's the way to go.